Listen, what I'm about to tell you might sound like something out of a movie, but every word of this story is true. And if you've ever trusted someone with your heart, your home, or your money, you need to hear this. Because sometimes the people closest to us are the ones plotting our downfall. And before we dive in, hit that like button if you've ever had someone betray your trust. Trust me, you're going to want to stick around for this one. My name is Marcus. I'm 44, and I've been a wealth management advisor here in Dallas for almost 2 decades. I've seen it all: the divorces that destroy families, the business partners who disappear with life savings, the children who rob their aging parents blind. I've helped hundreds of people protect their money from exactly what happened to me. But somehow, I missed the wolf living in my own house. It started with a text message that would change everything. I was sitting in my corner office on the 23rd floor, reviewing a client's portfolio, when my phone buzzed. The message was from my wife, Sarah. We'd been married 9 years, and she was supposed to be on a spiritual retreat in Arizona, something about realigning her chakras and reconnecting with her inner goddess. The text was simple, cold, and devastating. Marcus, I've transferred the inheritance money to my personal account. I'm starting fresh with someone who actually sees my worth. Don't try to contact me. This is for the best. Below the message were screenshots. Our joint savings account. The one that was supposed to have Dad's inheritance money. Zero balance. $127,000 gone. I read it 3 times. Then I looked out the window at the Dallas skyline and actually laughed. Not because it was funny, but because Sarah had just made the biggest mistake of her life. To understand why this moment was so significant, you need to know about my father. Robert Chun wasn't just my dad. He was my hero, my business mentor, and the smartest man I'd ever known. He'd come to America from Taiwan with nothing but a suitcase and a dream. Worked 3 jobs while learning English. Started a small restaurant in Chinatown that grew into 5 locations across Dallas-Fort Worth. Dad taught me everything about money, about trust, about reading people. Son, he'd say in his accented English, money shows people's true face. When people think you have something they want, watch their eyes, watch their hands, but most important, watch their heart. When Dad passed 8 months ago from a heart attack, it broke something in me. But he'd left me everything: the restaurants, the real estate, the investment accounts. Everything he built from scratch. It wasn't generational wealth, but it was close. About $2.8 million total. Sarah had been different after the funeral. More attentive, more interested in our finances, more concerned about our future together. She'd never cared about money before. When we got married, she was working as a yoga instructor, making maybe $30,000 a year. I was already well established, earning good money, handling all our finances. She used to joke that math gave her headaches, that she was grateful to have a husband who could handle the boring money stuff. But after Dad died, suddenly she wanted to understand everything. Our investments, our accounts, the inheritance process. She said it made her feel disconnected from our life together, like she was just along for the ride. I want to be your partner in everything, she'd said one evening about 3 months after the funeral. We were sitting on our back patio, drinking wine, watching the sunset, including our finances. I want to know where we stand, what our goals are, how we're planning for the future. It sounded reasonable, mature, like the kind of thing marriage counselors recommend. So I started including her in financial discussions, showed her our portfolio, explained our investment strategy, even gave her access to our regular checking and savings accounts. But something nagged at me. Call it intuition. Call it my father's voice in my head. Call it 20 years of watching people's true nature emerge when money was involved. I kept the inheritance money separate. Told myself it was temporary, that I was just being cautious while grief was affecting both of us. Sarah had started her spiritual journey around the same time. First it was meditation classes, then yoga teacher training, then weekend retreats, then week-long workshops, each one more expensive than the last. "I need this, Marcus," she'd say when I'd question the cost. "Losing your father has affected my energy. I'm carrying grief that isn't even mine. I need to cleanse myself spiritually before it damages our marriage." I paid for all of it. The $3,000 meditation intensive in Sedona, the $5,000 ayahuasca ceremony in Costa Rica, the $8,000 shamanic healing workshop in Peru. Every time, she'd come back glowing, renewed, talking about breakthroughs and awakenings, and toxic patterns she was releasing, but she never seemed happier. If anything, she became more critical of our life, our routine, our relationship. She started talking about feeling trapped by conventional marriage expectations, about how society's idea of commitment was actually a prison for the soul. "You're so focused on security and planning," she'd say. "Where's the passion? Where's the spontaneity? When did we become so boring?" I thought it was just grief. People process loss differently. I gave her space, paid for her healing journey, tried to be understanding. My dad had always said that good marriages require patience and compromise. But now, sitting in my office, staring at that text message, I understood. Sarah hadn't been finding herself on those retreats. She'd been finding someone else. I should have been angry, devastated, heartbroken. Instead, I felt something unexpected, relief. Because Sarah had just revealed who she really was. And I finally had clarity. See, there's something Sarah didn't know. The $127,000 in our joint account wasn't Dad's inheritance money. It was big. 3 months ago, when Sarah had pushed especially hard for complete financial transparency, something in my gut had screamed warning. It was the same instinct that had made my father successful, the same intuition I used to protect my clients' assets. So I'd done what any good financial advisor would do. I created a test. I moved $127,000 of my own money I'd saved over years of hard work, into our joint account. I told Sarah it was part of Dad's inheritance, money I was keeping. Liquid while we decided how to invest it together. Then I watched. She'd started asking about it constantly. How much was there? When would we get the rest? What were our plans for it? She'd even suggested we use some of it for a down payment on a vacation home in Colorado, somewhere we could retreat together when city life became overwhelming. And here's where the story gets really interesting, so make sure you're subscribed. Because you're not going to believe how this unfolds. The real inheritance money, all $2.8 million of it, was safely locked away in a series of trusts, LLCs, and investment accounts that Sarah had never even heard of. My father had taught me well. When you have something valuable, you protect it. When you're not sure about someone's motives, you test them. Sarah had failed the test spectacularly. I called my assistant and canceled my afternoon appointments. Then I drove home to our house in Preston Hollow, the house I bought 5 years ago, the house Sarah was about to lose any claim to. The house was empty. Of course, Sarah's car was gone. Most of her clothes were gone. Her jewelry box was empty. She planned this carefully, probably for weeks, maybe months. I walked through the rooms we'd shared, looking for signs I'd missed. In her office, I found a stack of printed emails. Flight confirmations to Phoenix, hotel reservations, car rental, agreements, all paid for with her personal credit card, the one I've been helping her pay off each month. But what really caught my attention was a handwritten note. Crumpled in the wastebasket, I smoothed it out and read it. "Garrick, I can't wait to start our new life together. Marcus has no idea what's coming. By the time he realizes what's happened, we'll be long gone with enough money to fund our retreat center. He's so naive, so trusting. He actually believes I love him." Derek, the life coach. From her spiritual retreats. The man who was going to help her find her authentic self. I sat down heavily in Sarah's chair, still holding the note. 9 years of marriage. 9 years of trust, of shared dreams, of building a life together. And she saw me as nothing more. Then a bank account with legs. My phone rang. My business partner, James. Marcus, I just got a weird call from Sarah. She was asking about your father's estate, wanting to know if there were any assets she might not be aware of. She said she was concerned about hidden accounts or offshore investments. I told her to talk to you, but she seemed agitated. When was this? About an hour ago, right before she asked me not to mention the call to you. So Sarah was already trying to track down money she thought she'd miss. The greed was consuming her, making her sloppy. James, I need you to do me a favor. If Sarah calls again, tell her you're looking into it, but these things take time. Don't give her any specific information. Marcus, what's going on? I'll explain later, but right now, I need to make some calls. Over the next several hours, I made a series of phone calls that would change everything. First, I called my lawyer, then my accountant, then my private investigator. By the time the sun set over Dallas, I had a plan. Sarah thought she'd outsmarted me, but she'd actually walked into a trap I'd been unconsciously setting for months. Every financial document she'd seen, every account statement she'd reviewed, every investment discussion we'd had. It was all carefully curated information that painted a picture of our wealth that was both true and completely misleading. Yes, we were well off. Yes, I'd inherited money from my father. But the amounts, the accounts, the accessibility. Sarah had been operating on assumptions, not facts. My private investigator, Maria Gonzalez, called me back within 3 hours. Your wife is in Scottsdale, she said. She's staying at the Four Seasons with a man named Derek Whitman, age 38, professional life coach, spiritual retreat leader. Also happens to have a criminal record for fraud in California. 3 counts of bilking middle-aged women out of their life savings through fake investment schemes. My blood ran cold. What kind of schemes? He targets women going through emotional transitions, divorce, death in the family, midlife crisis. Poses as a spiritual guide, gains their trust, convinces them to invest in fake retreat centers, wellness businesses, then disappears with the money. Sarah wasn't Derek's first victim. She was just his latest mark. There's more, Maria continued. I found records of communication between them going back 7 months. This relationship started right after your father's funeral. This wasn't some spontaneous spiritual awakening, Marcus. This was a calculated con job. 7 months. Sarah had been planning my financial destruction since the day we buried my father. That night, I sat in my home office and did something I never thought I'd have to do. I planned my wife's downfall. Not out of revenge, though I'd be lying if I said that wasn't part of it, but out of necessity. Sarah and Derek had made a serious miscalculation. They thought they were dealing with a grieving widower who was easy to manipulate. They had no idea they were targeting someone who'd spent his entire career protecting assets from exactly this kind of theft. Opened my laptop and began documenting everything. Every retreat Sarah had attended, every suspicious conversation, every red flag I'd ignored. I pulled bank records showing the pattern of her spending, the timing of her requests for financial information, the correlation between her spiritual journey and her growing financial demands. Then I did something that would either save me or destroy me. I started moving money, not hiding it. That would be illegal and stupid. But repositioning it, restructuring accounts, executing financial strategies, I've been planning anyway, but have been putting off. By morning, my assets would be completely protected and completely legitimate. And Sarah's ability to claim any of it would be effectively eliminated. My phone buzzed around 11 p.m. A text from Sarah. I know you're upset, but this is what's best for both of us. You'll understand eventually. The money will help us both start fresh. I stared at the message for a long time. Then I typed back, I hope you and Derek are very happy together. The response came immediately. How do you know about Derek? I didn't answer. Let her wonder. Let her worry. Let her start to understand that maybe, just maybe, she'd underestimated her mark. If you're enjoying this story of justice and karma, hit that subscribe button because the ending is going to blow your mind. 3 days later, Sarah called. Not. Texted, called. I was in a client meeting, but stepped out to take it. Marcus, we need to talk. Her voice was different. The confident, spiritual guru tone was gone. She sounded worried. About what? About Derek. About the money. About ... things. I thought you were starting fresh with someone who actually sees your worth. Silence. Then, Derek's gone. Gone? He left yesterday morning. Said he had to handle some business in California. Took my car and the money. I closed my eyes. Even knowing Derek was a con man, even expecting this exact scenario, I felt a flash of something that might have been pity for my wife. All of it, plus money I borrowed. You borrowed. Money? Against the house? Against my retirement account. Against a credit line I took out using your credit score. My pity evaporated instantly. How much, Sarah? $340,000 total. I sat down heavily. She hadn't just stolen from me. She'd stolen from us, from our future, from everything we built. Together, Derek said we needed startup capital for the retreat center. Said the $127,000 was just the beginning, that we needed more to really make an impact. He had investors lined up, contracts ready, permits approved. It all seemed so legitimate. And now? Now I can't reach him. His phone's disconnected. The retreat center address he gave me doesn't exist. The business licenses were fake. Marcus, I think I've been scammed. You think? Don't be sarcastic. This is serious. I could lose everything. You already have. Another silence. Then, what do you mean? I mean, Derek Whitman has a criminal record, Sarah. 3 counts of fraud. He's run this exact same con on at least 6 other women in the past 5 years. You weren't his spiritual partner. You were his next victim. How do you know all this? Because unlike you, I do my research before I trust people with my life. I could hear her crying now. Real tears, not the manipulative kind she'd used to justify her expensive retreats. Marcus, I need help. I know I don't deserve it, but I don't know what else to do. The credit lines are in both our names. If I default, it affects your credit. 2. And the house ... What about the house? I used it as collateral for some of the loans. I felt something inside me break. Not my heart. That had been breaking for months. Something else. The last piece of sympathy I had for the woman I'd once loved. Sarah, let me ask you something. When you were planning this with Derek, when you were falling in love with him, when you were deciding to steal my inheritance and disappear with him, did you ever, even for a second, think about what it would do to me? Marcus, I did. You think about the fact that the money you were stealing was all I had left of my father? Did you think about the fact that you were destroying 9 years of marriage for a man you'd known for 7 months? Did you think about anything other than yourself? I was confused. I was grieving too. Your father's death affected me. Stop. My voice was quiet, but she must have heard something in it, because she went silent immediately. Don't you dare use my father's death to justify this. Don't you dare pretend you were grieving when you were actually planning. What do you mean planning? I mean, I know this started 7 months ago, Sarah. I know you and Derek have been communicating since Dad's funeral. I know this whole spiritual journey was a cover story. I know you see me as nothing more than a naive bank account. How do you... I found your note. The one you threw away. The one where you called me naive and trusting, and talked about how I had no idea what was coming. Silence. So here's what's going to happen, I continued. You're going to come home. We're going to sit down with lawyers. We're going to figure out how much damage you've done. And then we're going to get divorced. Marcus, please. I know I made mistakes, but we can work through this. Derek manipulated me. I see that now. I was vulnerable, and he took advantage. No, Sarah, Derek didn't manipulate you. Derek gave you an excuse to do what you wanted to do anyway. Derek gave you permission to take what you thought was mine and disappear. The only reason you're calling me now is because he took your money too. That's not true, isn't it? If Derek was still there, if the con had worked, if he hadn't stolen from you too, would you be calling me right now? Would you be asking for help? Or would you be on a beach somewhere, laughing about how easy it was to fool your stupid husband? She was crying harder now, but I felt nothing. No sympathy, no anger, no sadness. Just a cold, clear understanding of who she really was. Come home, Sarah. We'll figure out the logistics. But understand this, we're done. Not because you fell in love with someone else. Not because you wanted a different life. But because you tried to destroy me to get it. I hung up. Sarah came home the next evening. She looked terrible, hollow-eyed, exhausted, aged by stress and guilt and the crushing realization of what she'd lost. She parked in our driveway, sat in her car for 10 minutes, then finally came to the door. I let her in, but didn't hug her, didn't offer comfort, didn't pretend this was anything other than a business meeting. The lawyers will be here in an hour, I said. Mine and yours? I don't have a lawyer. I hired one for you. You're going to need representation. We sat in our living room like strangers. Sarah kept looking around at the house, at the furniture we'd chosen together, at the photos on the walls. Photos of us traveling, celebrating anniversaries, looking happy. Marcus, she said finally, I need you to know that my feelings for you were real. Our marriage was real. I didn't fake everything. When? Did it stop being real? She was quiet for a long time. I don't know. Sometime after your father died. Everything felt different, like I was living someone else's life, like I was trapped in a story that wasn't mine. So you decided to write a new story. With my money. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. Derek said he loved me, said we were soulmates, said the universe was bringing us together to do important work. Derek is a professional con artist, Sarah. He doesn't love anyone. He loves what people can give him. I know that now. The lawyers arrived precisely on time. Mine was Patricia Wells, a formidable woman in her 50s who specialized in high-asset divorces. Sarah's was a young public defender type who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. Let's start with the assets, Patricia said, opening her briefcase. Mr. Chen, you provide me with a complete financial picture. Mrs. Chen, I need to understand exactly what debts you've incurred. Sarah went through it all. The credit lines, the home equity loan, the retirement account withdrawals, the personal loan she'd taken using false information about our income. By the time she finished, the damage was clear. $437,000 in total debt, most of it in both our names. However, Patricia continued, there are some mitigating factors. Mrs. Chung, you transferred $127,000 from a joint account without your husband's consent. In Texas, that constitutes theft of marital property. But it was a joint account, Sarah's lawyer protested. She had legal access. Legal access, yes. But the prenuptial agreement they signed specifically prohibits either party from making transfers over $50,000 without written consent from both parties. Sarah's face went white. We don't have a prenup. Patricia handed her a document. This is a copy of the prenuptial agreement you signed 9 years ago. It's properly notarized and witnessed. I watched Sarah read it, watched her remember signing. We told her it was just paperwork for the house purchase, standard protection stuff. She'd signed without reading it, trusted me completely. The prenup was thorough but fair. In the event of divorce, we'd each keep what we brought to the marriage, plus half of what we'd accumulated together. But it also included specific clauses about asset protection and bad faith actions. The unauthorized transfer clause is very clear, Patricia explained. Any attempt to transfer assets without consent results in forfeiture of all claims to marital property. What does that mean? Sarah asked. It means you get nothing. No alimony, no property settlement, no claim to any assets acquired during the marriage. The house, the investment accounts, the business interests. Mr. Chun keeps everything. Sarah's lawyer looked uncomfortable. We could argue that the agreement is unconscionable. With what evidence? Patricia interrupted. Mrs. Chun had independent legal representation when she signed this. She was advised to read it carefully. She chose not to. And the terms are completely fair, assuming both parties act in good faith. But I didn't act in good faith, Sarah whispered. No, I said. You didn't. This is where the story takes another incredible turn. So if you haven't subscribed yet, do it now because you won't believe how this ends. Sarah's lawyer tried various angles: emotional distress, mental incapacity, fraud, duress. None of it stuck. The prenup was ironclad, and Sarah's actions were clearly premeditated. What about the debt she incurred? Her lawyer asked. Mr. Chun's credit is attached to several of these loans. That, Patricia said with a slight smile, is where things get interesting. She pulled out another set of documents. 3 months ago, Mr. Chun restructured his assets and credit profile. All joint accounts were closed and replaced with individual accounts. All joint credit lines were paid off and closed. Mrs. Chun's spending over the past 3 months has been entirely on credit accounts that she opened independently. But she used my income information, I said. She forged my signature on several applications, which makes it identity theft and fraud, Patricia noted. Mr. Chun could press criminal charges if he chooses. Sarah was staring at me with something like awe. You plan all of this. The prenup, the asset protection, the credit separation. You knew. I didn't know, I said. I suspected, and I protected myself accordingly. The $127,000 I took, that wasn't your inheritance money, was it? No, that was bait money. My own savings, money I was willing to lose to find out who you really were. And the real inheritance? Safe, protected, completely out of your reach. Sarah's lawyer whispered something to her. She nodded, then looked at me. I'll sign whatever papers you want. I won't contest a divorce. I just ... I need help with the debt. I can't pay back $437,000. That's not my problem anymore. Marcus, please. I know I don't deserve it, but I'm begging you. I'll lose everything. I'll have to declare bankruptcy. My credit will be destroyed. I'll have nothing. I thought about my father, about all the lessons he taught me about money and trust and human nature, about how some people were helping and some people weren't. Sarah, I said finally, do you remember what you wrote in that note to Derek? About how naive I was, how trusting, how I had no idea what was coming. She nodded, tears streaming down her face. You were wrong about one thing. I did know what was coming. Maybe not the specifics, but I knew, and I prepared accordingly. Not because I wanted to hurt you, but because I refused to let you hurt me. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the neighborhood where we planned to raise children, grow old together, build a life. The $127,000 you stole? Keep it. Consider it a divorce settlement. It's probably more than Derek left you with. He left me with nothing. Less than nothing. Then you learned an expensive lesson about trust. The divorce was finalized 6 weeks later. Sarah signed everything without protest, took her clothes and personal items, and moved back to Oklahoma to live with her parents. Her credit was destroyed, her debt was overwhelming, and her dreams of a spiritual awakening retreat center were permanently dead. 6 months after the divorce was final, I got a call from Maria Gonzalez, my private investigator. Derek Whitman was arrested in Nevada, she said. Got caught running the same con on a wealthy widow in Las Vegas. When they searched his apartment, they found evidence of at least 12 different victims over the past 8 years. What about the money? Most of it's gone, spent on maintaining his lifestyle and funding new cons, but they recovered about $50,000 from various accounts. The Nevada Day wants to know if you want to press charges against him for conspiracy to commit fraud. I thought about it. Part of me wanted to see Derek pay for what he'd done to Sarah, even though Sarah had been a willing participant. But another part of me just wanted to move on. What would happen to Sarah if I pressed charges? She'd probably be charged as an accomplice. Conspiracy, fraud, identity theft. She could face serious prison time. In the end, I didn't press charges. Not because I forgave Sarah, but because I didn't want her destruction on my conscience. She destroyed herself quite thoroughly without my help. Instead, I focused on rebuilding. I sold the house in Preston Hollow. Too many memories, too much negative energy. Bought a smaller place in East Dallas, closer to the office, with a view of the downtown skyline my father had loved. I started dating again, carefully this time. Met women through work, through friends, through professional organizations. Women with their own careers, their own money, their own lives. Women who didn't need me to complete them or fund their spiritual journeys. And here's the part that really proves karma is real. Make sure you stick around for this because it's incredible. About a year after the divorce, I was having lunch with a client when I noticed a familiar face at a nearby table. Sarah. She was working as a server, looking tired but not unhappy. She hadn't seen me. I watched her for a few minutes, taking orders, serving food, smiling politely at customers. She looked different, older, more grounded, less ethereal. More real. When my client meeting ended, I approached her table. Hello, Sarah. She looked up, startled. Marcus, I didn't know you came here. I don't usually. Client lunch. I gestured around the modest restaurant. How are you? I'm okay. Good, actually. Working. Paying off debt. Learning to live within my means. I heard about Derek's arrest. She nodded. I testified against him. Helped put him away for 8 years. That was brave. It was necessary. He hurt a lot of people. I was just one of them. We stood there awkwardly for a moment. Then Sarah said, Marcus, I need to tell you something. I never apologize. Not really? Not for the right things? You don't need to. Yes, I do. I didn't just steal your money. I stole your trust. I stole years of your life. I stole your faith in people you love. That's so much worse than money. I looked at her for a long moment. She was right. The money had been replaceable. The trust hadn't. Ben, I forgive you, I said. And I meant it. Thank you. Tears were forming in her eyes. That means more than you know. Are you happy? I asked. Really happy, not spiritual retreat happy. She smiled, and for the first time in years, it looked genuine. I'm getting there. Day by day, dollar by dollar, working for everything instead of expecting it to be given to me. Good for you. I left the restaurant feeling lighter than I had in months. Not because Sarah was suffering. She wasn't, really. She was rebuilding, same as me. But because seeing her remind me of something important, sometimes the worst thing that happens to you turns out to be the best thing that could have happened. 2 years later, I'm sitting in my new office, looking at a portfolio that's grown significantly since the divorce. Dad's inheritance money has been invested wisely, and my business has thrived. Turns out that surviving financial betrayal makes you pretty good at helping other people avoid it. I've become something of a specialist in asset protection and divorce planning. Couples come to me before they get married, wanting to set up prenups and financial structures that protect both parties. I help them understand that planning for the worst-case scenario doesn't mean you expect it to happen. It means you love each other enough to be responsible about it. I also help people who are going through what I went through. Men and women who discovered that their spouse has been stealing from them, planning to leave them, or manipulating them financially. It's more common than you'd think, and it's always devastating. Last month, a woman named Jennifer came to see me. Her husband of 15 years had emptied their business account and disappeared with his secretary. She was in her 50s, had no idea how to manage money, and was convinced she'd lose everything. I trusted him completely, she told me, crying. He handled all the finances. I never even looked at the statements. That's not your fault, I told her. But it is your responsibility to learn from it. I helped Jennifer discover that her husband had been planning his exit for over a year, slowly moving money into accounts she didn't know about. But like Sarah, he'd made mistakes. Like Sarah, he'd underestimated his victim. And like Sarah, he'd left evidence that would ultimately be his downfall. The legal process is still ongoing, but Jennifer will be fine. More than fine. She's learned to manage her own money, started her own business, and discovered that she's much stronger than she ever imagined. If you're still watching, you're going to love how this story comes full circle. Make sure you're subscribed because the final twist is coming. I've also been dating someone for the past 8 months. Her name is Elena, and she's a financial crimes investigator with the FBI. We met at a conference on asset protection, where she was giving a presentation on romance scams, and I was speaking about prenuptial planning. Elena knows about Sarah, about Derek, about everything that happened. She's seen the court documents, read the private investigative reports, understands exactly how close I came to losing everything. You realize you're probably the most financially paranoid man in Dallas, she told me recently, laughing. Is that a problem? Are you kidding? It's the sexiest thing about you. I work fraud cases all day. I know what financial naivety looks like, and it's not pretty. Elena has her own money, her own career, her own life. She doesn't need me to complete her or fund her dreams. We split expenses fairly, maintain separate accounts, and talk openly about money without it being weird or romantic or spiritual. It's the healthiest relationship I've ever had. 3 weeks ago, Elena and I were having dinner when she said something that stopped me cold. Marcus, I need to tell you something about your ex-wife. My heart skipped. What about her? She applied for a job with the Bureau, Financial Crimes Unit. They called me for a background reference. What did you tell them? The truth. That she was a victim of fraud who made some terrible decisions, but ultimately did the right thing by testifying against her abuser. That she spent the past 3 years rebuilding her life and paying her debts. Are they going to hire her? Probably. She's got real-world experience with financial crime from both sides. She understands how victims think and how perpetrators operate. That's valuable. I sat back in my chair processing this. Sarah, working for the FBI. Sarah, helping other people avoid the trap she'd fallen into. Sarah, turning her worst mistake into her greatest strength. How do you feel about that? Elena asked. Proud of her, I said, and realized I meant it. Really proud. This is the final part of this incredible story, and if you've made it this far, you absolutely need to subscribe and hit that notification bell because stories like this don't come. Around off in Dot last week, I was reviewing a client's portfolio when my assistant buzzed me. Marcus, there's an FBI agent here to see you. Sarah Chen. Well, Sarah Matthews now. She says it's about a case. I told her to send Sarah in. She walked into my office wearing a navy blue suit, a badge on her belt, and a confidence I'd never seen in her before. She looked professional, competent, strong. Nothing like the lost spiritual seeker I divorced 3 years ago. Agent Matthews, I said, standing to shake her hand. Mr. Chun, thank you for seeing me. We sat down, and for a moment, it felt surreal. My ex-wife, now an FBI agent, sitting across from my desk like any other law enforcement official. I'm working. A case, Sarah said, her voice professional, but not cold. Romance fraud, asset theft. The perpetrator's pattern matches someone you might know. She handed me a file. I opened it and immediately recognized the photos inside. Derek Whitman, sighed. He's out of prison. Early release for good behavior. And he's already back to his old tricks. I looked through the file. New victims, same playbook. Vulnerable women, spiritual retreats, fake investment opportunities. The man was relentless. What do you need from me? Your ex-wife's case file helped us establish his pattern. But we need more. We need someone who understands his financial methods, someone who can trace the money trail. You want me to consult on the case. I want you to help us put him away for good this time. I closed the file and looked at Sarah, Agent Matthews. This is personal for you. Extremely personal. Derek didn't just rob me of money, Marcus. He robbed me of years of my life, my marriage, my integrity. He turned me into someone I didn't recognize. You turned yourself into that person, I said gently. Derek just gave you permission. She nodded. You're right. And that's exactly why I need to stop him. I know how he thinks, how he operates, how he makes his victims feel. I know because I was there. And you think I can help? I think you're the only person who can help. You saw through his con before any of us did. You protected yourself when everyone else was getting played. We need that insight. I thought about it. Working with the FBI to bring down Derek Whitman. Working with Sarah to right a wrong that had destroyed our marriage and hurt countless other people. What's the case? He's targeting wealthy widows in Arizona. Same retreat center cover story, same spiritual awakening pitch. But this time, he's not just stealing their money. He's convincing them to liquidate everything: houses, retirement accounts, life insurance policies. We're talking about millions of dollars. And he's not working alone. No, he's got a whole network now. Fake spiritual advisors, phony investment brokers, corrupt lawyers. It's a sophisticated operation. I lean back in my chair. Sarah, can I ask you something? Of course. Why did you really come to me? The FBI has financial analysts, forensic accountants, people who specialize in this kind of fraud. Why do you need me? She was quiet for a long moment. Then, because you're the only person who's ever outplayed Derek Whitman. You saw him coming from a mile away, and you beat him at his own game. I need to learn how you did that. I didn't beat him, Sarah. I just didn't let him beat me. What's the difference? Derek's weakness isn't that he's not smart. He's very smart. His weakness is that he underestimates people. He thinks if someone trusts him, they're stupid. If someone loves him, they're weak. If someone believes in him, they're naive. And you never trusted him. I never trusted you. Not completely. Not after Dad died and you changed. The words hung in the air between us. Sarah's face didn't change, but I saw something flicker in her eyes. That must have been lonely, she said finally. Being married to someone you couldn't trust. It was. I'm sorry for that. I'm sorry for all of it. I know you are. We sat in silence for a moment. Then Sarah said, So will you help us? On one condition. What's that? When we catch Derek, I want to be there. I want to see his face when he realizes he's been outplayed by the naive, trusting husband he thought he destroyed. Sarah smiled. A real smile, not the artificial spiritual seeker smile from our marriage. I think that can be arranged. 3 months later, I was sitting in a surveillance van outside a luxury resort in Sedona, Arizona, watching Derek Whitman work his magic on his latest victim. Margaret Hoffman, 67, recently widowed, worth approximately $4.2 million. He's good, Agent Rodriguez said, adjusting the audio equipment. Look how he's mirroring her body language, matching her energy level. Through the high-powered surveillance equipment, we could see Derek and Margaret having what appeared to be a deep spiritual conversation by the resort's meditation garden. He was wearing all white, looking serene and enlightened. She was hanging on his every word. He's telling her about the sacred geometry of wealth, Sarah said, listening through her earpiece. How money is just energy, and energy needs to flow to create abundance. Same line he used on you? I asked. Word for word. We'd been tracking Derek for weeks, building a case that would put him away for decades. The operation was complex. Derek had multiple fake identities, shell companies, and offshore accounts. But thanks to my financial analysis and Sarah's insider knowledge of his methods, we'd mapped his entire network. "He's moving to the next phase," Sarah said, inviting her to a private consultation. "That's where he'll make his pitch," I said. "The Retreat Center investment opportunity." "Margaret's wearing a wire," Agent Rodriguez confirmed. "And we've got visual from 6 different angles." Margaret Hoffman wasn't actually a victim. She was an undercover FBI agent, a specialist in financial crimes who'd volunteered to be the... Wait, she'd been briefed on Derek's methods, knew exactly what to expect, and was playing her role perfectly, but Derek didn't know that. Derek thought he found another vulnerable widow to exploit. "Contact initiated," came Margaret's voice through our earpieces. "He's inviting me to his private office." "Copy that," Sarah said into her microphone. "All units prepare for phase 2. And this is where the story gets absolutely incredible. If you're not subscribed yet, you need to hit that button right now because you're about to witness the most satisfying takedown in FBI history. Derek's private office was actually a suite at the resort, decorated to look like a spiritual sanctuary. Crystals, incense, meditation cushions, certificates from fake spiritual organizations. The whole setup was designed to make victims feel like they were in a sacred space, somewhere they could trust completely. Margaret entered the suite, and Derek immediately went into his routine. "Margaret, I need you to know that what we're about to discuss is deeply sacred. The universe has brought us together for a reason." "I feel that too," Margaret said, playing her role perfectly. "There's something so peaceful about you, Derek. So genuine. That's because I found my true calling. For years, I was trapped in the corporate world, making money for other people, serving a system that destroys souls. But then I awakened to my higher purpose, which is creating spaces where people can heal, where they can reconnect with their authentic selves, where they can use their resources to make a real difference in the world." Derek pulled out a laptop and showed Margaret a presentation about his retreat center project. Beautiful photos of desert landscapes, architectural renderings of meditation halls, testimonials from fake investors. "This is the vision," he said. "A place where people like you, successful, intelligent, spiritually aware, can come to rediscover what really matters." "It's beautiful," Margaret said. "How much would something like this cost?" "That's the beautiful thing about it. It's not about cost. It's about contribution. People don't pay to build this place. They invest in it. They become part of the vision." "Invest how?" "Minimum contribution is $500,000. But Margaret, I can see that you're not a minimum kind of person. You're someone who thinks bigger, who wants to make a real impact." In the surveillance van, I watched Derek's face on the monitor. He was completely focused, completely confident. He thought he was minutes away from scoring the biggest con of his career. "What kind of impact?" Margaret asked. "Well, someone with your resources, your intelligence, your spiritual awareness, someone like you could be a founding partner. Full ownership stake, guaranteed returns, plus the satisfaction of knowing you've helped create something sacred." "How much for a founding partnership?" Derek leaned forward, his voice dropping to a whisper. $2 million. Transferred today, before the other investors claim the remaining spots. $2 million. I know it sounds like a lot. But Margaret, think about what you're buying. You're not just investing in a retreat center. You're investing in the future of human consciousness. You're investing in healing, in awakening, in the elevation of the human spirit." Margaret was quiet for a moment, as if considering. Then, "Derek, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "What happened to Sarah Sandlin?" Derek's face went blank. "I'm sorry, who?" "Sarah Sandlin, from Dallas. You convinced her to invest in a retreat center about 4 years ago. She transferred her entire life, savings to you, and then you disappeared." The color drained from Derek's face. I think you're confused. Am I? What about Linda Morrison in California? Or Patricia Webb in Florida? Or Jennifer Chang in Seattle? All wealthy women going through difficult times. All convinced to invest. In retreat centers that never existed. Derek stood up abruptly. I think there's been a misunderstanding. I don't know what you're talking about. Really? Because I have all the documentation right here. Margaret reached into her purse and pulled out a badge. FBI Agent Margaret Hoffman. Derek Whitman, you're under arrest for fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy to commit theft. Derek's face went through a series of expressions: shock, fear, anger, and finally resignation. He'd been caught, and he knew it. You have the right to remain silent, Margaret continued, as FBI agents burst through the door. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. Derek didn't resist. He just stood there, looking stunned, as they put the handcuffs on him. How? He asked. How did you know? Because you tried to con the wrong person, Sarah said, walking into the room. Remember me, Derek. Derek's eyes widened as he recognized her. Sarah? But you're FBI Agent Sarah Matthews now. And you just fell for the same kind of trap my ex-husband set for me 4 years ago. Except his was legal, and ours is going to put you in prison for the next 20 years. Make sure you stay until the very end, because this conclusion is going to restore your faith in justice. The trial lasted 6 weeks. Derek was charged with 23 counts of fraud, conspiracy, and money laundering. The prosecution presented evidence of his cons going back 8 years, affecting over 30 victims, totaling more than $6 million in stolen assets. I testified as an expert, witness explaining how Derek's financial schemes worked and how he'd attempted to manipulate our joint assets. Sarah testified about her experience as a victim and how that experience had led her to a career in law enforcement. The most powerful moment came when Derek's lawyer tried to argue that his clients were willing participants, that they'd chosen to invest their money in his projects. Your Honor, the defense attorney said, my client never forced anyone to give him money. These were business investments that unfortunately didn't work out. Sarah stood up from the prosecution table. Your Honor, may I address the court? The judge nodded. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I want you to understand something about what it's like to be conned by Derek Whitman. You think you're making a choice. You think you're making a smart business decision. You think you're following your heart. But you're not. You're following a carefully crafted script that's been perfected over years of practice. Derek doesn't just steal your money. He steals your ability to think clearly, to trust your instincts, to see reality as it actually is. I know this because I was his victim. I gave him $127,000 of my family's money. I destroyed my marriage. I betrayed the trust of a man who loved me. And I did it all while believing I was making the best decision of my life. The difference between me and Derek's other victims is that I was lucky. My husband was smarter than Derek. My husband protected us both, even when I was working against him. Derek Whitman is a predator. He targets people when they're vulnerable, when they're grieving, when they're searching for meaning. He offers them hope and purpose and spiritual awakening. And then he takes everything they have. Don't let him do it again. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours. Guilty on all counts, Derek was sentenced to 25 years in federal prison. He'll be eligible for parole in 15 years, when he's 53 years old. By then, hopefully he'll have learned that there are consequences for destroying people's lives. After the trial, Sarah and I had coffee together. Not as ex-spouses, not as FBI agent and consultant, but as two people who'd survived something terrible and come out stronger. I have something for you, she said, reaching into her briefcase. She pulled out a check for $127,000. What's this? The money I stole, with interest. I've been making payments into an account for the past 3 years. It's finally enough to Pay you back. I stared at the check. Sarah, you don't have to. Yes, I do. I can't undo what I did, but I can make it right financially. Keep it. Put it toward your student loans or buy a house or invest it. But don't give it to me out of guilt. It's not guilt, Marcus. It's justice. And it's the only way I can move forward with a clear conscience. I looked at her for a long moment. The woman sitting across from me was nothing like the person I married 9 years ago. She was stronger, more grounded, more authentic. The spiritual journey she'd been seeking. Through expensive retreats and fake gurus, she'd found through hard work and taking responsibility for her actions. Okay, I said, taking the check. But I'm not keeping it. What do you mean? I'm donating it to the FBI's Victim Assistance Fund in your name, so other people who've been conned can get help rebuilding their lives. Sarah smiled, and for the first time since our divorce, it reached her eyes. Dad would have liked that. Your dad? No, your dad. He always said money should be used to help people, not hurt them. We sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Sarah said, Marcus, can I ask you something? Sure. Do you think we could have worked things out? If I hadn't fallen for Derek's con, if I hadn't stolen the money, if I just talked to you about how I was feeling. I thought about it carefully. I don't know. Maybe. But honestly, Sarah, I think we both needed to become different people before we could have a real relationship with anyone. You're probably right. Are you dating anyone? Actually, yes. Another agent. Someone who understands. The work understands the importance of trust and honesty. I'm glad. What about you? Elena, right? Right. We're taking it slow. But it's good. Really good. I'm happy for you. You deserve someone who appreciates what you have to offer. We finished our coffee and walked outside together. The sun was setting over Dallas, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. It was beautiful, peaceful, perfect. Sarah, I said as we reached our cars, I want you to know something. I forgive you, completely, for all of it. Thank you. That means everything. And I'm proud of you for rebuilding your life, for helping other people, for turning your worst mistake into your greatest strength. I learned from the best, she said. You showed me what it looks like to protect yourself without destroying other people. That's a skill I use every day now. We hugged briefly, awkwardly, but genuinely. Then we got in our separate cars and drove away toward our separate lives, our separate futures. That night, I called Elena and told her about the trial, about the check, about the conversation with Sarah. How do you feel? She asked. Free. I said, finally, completely free. Good. Because I have news. What news? The Bureau is transferring me to the white-collar crime unit. I'll be working with Sarah on financial fraud cases. How do you feel about that? Excited. She's good at what she does, Marcus. Really good. And she's learned from her mistakes in a way that makes her incredibly effective at preventing other people from making the same ones. So you're okay with my ex-wife being your colleague? I'm okay with your ex-wife being my colleague. I'm not okay with her being your ex-wife. What do you mean? I mean, I think it's time we made our relationship official. Exclusive. Permanent. I smiled. Are you proposing to me? I'm proposing that we start talking about it. Seriously. With lawyers and prenups and all the boring financial stuff that makes a marriage actually work. I love you, Elena Rodriguez. I love you too, Marcus Chun. And I promise never to steal your inheritance money or run away with a fake spiritual guru. That's all I ask. 3 months later, Elena and I were married in a small ceremony in my backyard. My business partner James was my best man. Sarah sent a beautiful congratulations card and a gift, a crystal paperweight engraved with the words trust but verify. It sits on my desk now, a reminder of everything I've learned about love, trust, money, and human nature. A reminder that the worst thing that happens to you can sometimes be the best thing that could have happened. And sometimes if you're very lucky, the people who hurt you the most can become the people who help you grow the most. My father would have been proud.